Well, it's Wednesday, and you all know what that means. As you know, WWE Evolve features, of course, a number one contendership in a four-way for the Evolve Championship. So the real question is, who will be the next person to challenge our current men's Evolve champion, Aaron Rourke? Well, we'll just have to find out. But we also have other two matches and plenty other storylines that also being played as well. And then we move on with AEW Dynamite. As you all know, they're on the road to Double or Nothing. But the real question we ask ourselves, will MJF accept the contract by Darby Allin if, of course, he survives against Takeshita? That means Darby Allin will be defending the title under the condition that if MJF signs it, he has to put his hair on the line, which is going to be a lot of fun. But however, battle lines are also being drawn for the upcoming Double or Nothing. So we'll see how that plays out as well. And of course, as always, we'll wrap up our episode as usual with some news updates to give you guys updates on what's been happening in the world of wrestling, such as what events the promotions are thrown out, who's booked, what matches are set, including developments that are happening in the world of wrestling as we speak. So, let's get ready for another episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
Hey everyone, welcome to Deleted Wrestle Zone, all things that is pro wrestling with AEW, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling, TNA, the National Wrestling Alliance, various promotions, wrestlers, matches, and championships. I am your host, J-Rod here. So, if you are new to the channel, welcome. This is a channel we do a lot of pro wrestling reviews from various promotions, not only here in the United States, but also in Japan, Mexico, Canada, Europe, the UK. Anywhere where pro wrestling is not as big, but it continues to grow. We also, of course, do discussion videos, talk about various topics such as the wrestlers themselves, the promotions, factions, storylines, whatever we want to talk about. We also, of course, do more news updates. If certain information is unable to be on this episode, we can either put it on the next one or on a separate video by itself. We also, of course, do some real-timey news updates to keep you guys on alert if something has happened in the world of wrestling that needs to be addressed ASAP. We also, of course, got the Unagi Sayaka Watch and various other cool wrestling content as well. So if you like what you see, please subscribe to us and click on that subscribe button. You'll be getting a lot of daily reviews and other cool wrestling content as well. But if you like this episode, please give us a like on the like button or a nice comment in the description down below. Now, enough of the jibber jabbers, let's get started. So, let's begin with WWE Evolve. Okay, WWE Evolve. Now, it opened up with Holly Riggins and Cam Hendricks. As you know, these guys have been nothing but problems since they arrived in Evolve, trying to say that they are tired of guys like from the IDs taking their spots. However, of course, they couldn't resist about how they humiliated, of course, Tate Wild last week. As you know, Harley Riggins was in the match against them, but however, of course, Cam Hendricks got involved. So they thought it was pretty funny. But however, Cam Hendricks, as you know, he's involved in the four-way match in the number one contendership for the Men's Evolve Championship. But we'll see how that rolls up from there, okay? Now, our first official match is Nikkita Lyons versus Karmen Petrovic. Now, if you guys saw what happened last week, Karmen Petrovic was in the gym just working out, but rudely interrupted by Nikkita Lyons and Sloane Jacobs since, of course, they wanted to do a music video and they were being disrespectful towards her. However, of course, Karmen Petrovic's not going to take this crap one way or the other and set up this match, and that's exactly what happened. Now, things would have gone entirely Karmen Petrovic way, but of course, Sloane Jacobs showed up to give Nikkita Lyons a helping hand. But however, of course, Lady Luck, who as you all saw what happened last week, decided to give a little payback for what happened. But she wasn't the only one. Nikkita Lyons thought she had this match won, but thank God for our Evolve Women's Champion who decided to take matters in their own hands. As you all saw, Wendy Chu and Lady Luck, they had a spectacular great main event last week, but they had to be ruined by Nikkita Lyons and Sloane Jacobs. So you can say payback's a biatch. So you can say that. But however, it was Karmen Petrovic with the Petrifier onto Nikkita Lyons, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, done. And I'm sure Nikkita Lyons and Sloane Jacobs are not going to take this kindly. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out too. Now, Brooks Jensen bump into Dorian Van Dukes. It's like giving him a stern warning to stay out of his way because he wants to be Evolve champion. But Dorian Van Dukes, he's not an idiot. He's not going to play by his game. Not to mention he was speaking to him in French, even though we know Jensen is dumb enough not to know what he's saying. But we'll see what happens. Now, Harlem Lewis, as you know, has been dealing with far more issues. Now, of course, he was in the road of becoming Evolve champion, but there was one obstacle that came around, and that is, of course, Braxton Cole. So you can tell how this was going to go. Braxton Cole once again decided to get in his face and all that. So I'm sure we will see a new rivalry will take place one way or another. Now, Romero Moreno, who's one of the newer ID programs, showed up, was feeling a bit down after losing last week. But however, Wilde told him, look, I lost more matches than I can win. So he told him that this was just in a learning experience. I mean, yeah, this is something that they have to learn along the way, because Evolve is about evolving yourself, your wrestling craft. And that's something that Moreno has to understand. You're here to learn some new things, to try to adapt to who you are now. So we'll see where that leads. Now, Tristan Angels, as you know, one of the 4 competitors involving in the #1 contendership for the Men's Evolve Championship, had some things to say. As you know, he is claiming that this is now his time to make history, and that's exactly what he plans to do. Now, our next match, we have It's Gall taking on CJ Valor. If you guys saw what happened last week, It's Gall showed up and attacked CJ Valor, because if you guys remember, It's Gall became friends with Santi Rivera and Jacare Ball until they turned on him and joined Max Abram and CJ Valor, forming a group of their own. So you can tell that It's Gall was intending to fight back, and I have to say he did. But of course, the numbers game was going to be too much. Rivera actually distracted the ref, giving Ball the chance to cheap shot Gall's knee, and just like that, Rivera Valor actually put him down in a pinfall. 1, 2, 3, it was done. And of course, during the post-match, Max Abram said that he and his friends are calling some the Mog Squad. Now, I don't know what the Mog Squad's supposed to be, but, you know, it's kind of dumb, in my opinion. Now, Cappuccino Jones, this was recorded by some anonymous guy talking on the phone. We don't know exactly what was going on, but it seems someone is kind of curious about the situation. Now, in the result of what happened in that #1 contendership for the Evolve Women's Championship, it seems now the blame game has begun. Gianna Capri is looking at Anya Rune as responsible. Same thing with Veronica Hayes or whatever. But yes, she is. So basically, they're trying to say whose fault was it. Well, someone was had to lose, you know, and that's exactly what happened. Now, speaking of our #1 contendership, we have the 4-way match for the #1 contendership for the Men's Evolve title. We have Dorian Van Dukes, Tristan Angels, and Cam Hendricks, and of course Brooks Jensen. But however, this match was strictly observed up close by our current Men's Evolve champion, Aaron Rourke. Now, of course, he had to know who exactly he wants to find out who will be the next person to take a crack at him. So he's not playing a dumb game. He is being well prepared who he has to face. Now, of course, there was going to be some dirty tricks by certain individuals. Amongst them is, of course, Brooks Jensen. He used his boot by removing it and whacking, what's his name? Dorian Van Dux, but apparently that failed until, of course, Tristan Angel showed up. And then, however, Cam Hendricks had this match won, but however, Tate Wild decided to take matters in his own hands and beat the crap out of it in this lead, of course, with Angels, Dux, and of course Jensen to try to finish this off. But however, Brooks Jensen thought he had this match won until, of course, Angels applied an inside cradle, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, new #1 contender. So that means Aaron Rourke now knows who will be next to challenge him. So I'm sure he's going to be mentally prepared for this match. So we'll see what happens. So right now we are officially done with WWE Evolve. Let's move on with AEW Dynamite. Okay, AEW Dynamite. Well, we opened up with a very interesting early interview by Renee Paquette to MJF. Now, you may have heard what happened last week. Well, MJF has been demanding a rematch, but the only way he's going to do that is to sign a contract for Double or Nothing, because we know how MJF is. MJF rather not play by anybody's rules but himself. But Darby Allin said he's willing to put his belt on the line under the condition MJF has to put his hair on the line. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's something that I've seen countless times as a wrestling fan, especially when I watched Lucha Libre as a kid. And believe me, that is the most embarrassing thing for any wrestler, especially a luchador, who have to go through. So MJF couldn't give a clear answer about that, about putting his hair on the line, until he had to see a group of men bald. I mean, he saw Ryan Brinsberg, he saw, of course, Knox, Sanjay Dutt and Christopher Daniels, Tommaso Ciampa, John Silver, and then, of course, Ricochet had to tell him that he looks good bald. And I don't think you can tell by MJF's like, I want to beat the crap out of you, Ricochet. I mean, I don't blame MJF for feeling that way, but he thinks it's funny. But we'll see. Now, anyway, our first match, we have Tommaso Ciampa teaming up with FTR and the members of the Dogs, Clark Connors and David Finlay. They take on Orange Cassidy, the Young Bucks, and of course Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. And I thought this match was really fun, intense, and too many spots. But of course, when it comes to FTR, we know that that idiot Snake, of course, Stokely Hathaway, was going to get involved. But you know what? He got involved anyway by being dragged into the ring. And of course, we did see interesting things. It was Copeland who picked up the win by applying a spear onto Connors, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, it was done. Because we know Stokely Hathaway does not want to see Copeland or Christian Cage succeed, but we'll get to that. Now, once again, Will Ospreay is training with the Death Riders, and of course, once again, John Mox is giving his words of wisdom about the reality and all this other stuff, because we know Will Ospreay will be in action to take on, of course, Ace Austin. Now, the man, as you know, had accepted the challenge. So apparently they just revealed that Mark Davis, our AEW National Champion, will be teaming up with them. But however, of course, they even got Andrade to join, so that makes 5. So it's the man, Ricochet, Teo Leona, Bishop Khan, and then of course members of Don Callis family, Mark Davis and Andrade. However, 2 more people joined them, and that is the Dogs, Clark Connors and David Finlay. Now, we jump into a very interesting match. I like to call it a squash match. We have Mike Bailey taking on Westbrook. I think this is BK Westbrook, of course, himself. But of course, I figured this match was going to end with Bailey picking up the win with the Ultimate Weapon, and just like that, it was over. However, of course, his tag team partner and friend and fellow Jet Speed, Kevin Knight, was up, putting the TNT title on the line in an open challenge, and the person that actually challenged him was, in fact, of course, the Machine, Brian Cage, who's been gone for 14 months. It is great to see him. I know that he's been injured countless times, but he always bounced back. I'm not going to lie about that. But man, he was manhandling Kevin Knight as possible. But of course, wherever he goes, his other tag team partner, the Murder Hawk, Lance Archer, tried to get involved. But thank God for Bayley for being there to back him up, because we know how the Don Callis family act. They think they are the greatest faction. No, they're just a bunch of cheaters and all that. But however, of course, Kevin Knight was able to defeat Brian Cage with the UFO splash, and just like that, 1, 2, 3, it was over. However, of course, Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight, as you know, they become good friends. But of course, the one thing they are determined, even if they are not tag team champions, they're determined to also acquire singles championships. As you know, Kevin Knight is the current TNT champion. Well, Mike Bailey said whoever comes out between Takeshita and Darby Allin, he got next. So we'll see how that plays out too. Now, Jungle Jack Perry, as you know, had some words to say about, of course, Mark Davis. He's calling him that he is no champion, and the obvious reason is he had to get help from outside source like Ricochet. And of course, he is determined to regain the national title. But however, Jack Perry now knows he has to confront Davis at Double or Nothing in the Stadium Stampede. So that's going to be a very interesting matchup to go through. Now, our next match is Will Ospreay versus Ace Austin. Man, another good match. I have to say it was pretty good. I liked how this one was going. Will Ospreay, as you know, is determined to heal up, but there was too many spots, too many moments that I thought, whoa, that's pretty cool. But unfortunately, Will Ospreay, instead of using his usual arsenal like the Stormbreaker or Tiger Driver, he used an armbar, which was very effective, of course, that allowed him to pick up the win. But however, the Ops showed up as soon as the match was over. It seems that they had some business to attend to, because the Ops were not liking what they're saying. Samoa Joe reminded him, hey, you were attacked by the Death Riders, and now you're on their side. Now, Will Ospreay made it perfectly clear that he is not a member of the Death Riders, but it seems like they made it look like he is, but he's not. But luckily, the Death Riders have his back, you know. And I'm sure Will Ospreay was willing to fight on his own, but it seems that Jon Moxley wasn't going to let that happen. Now, we did see the interview with Don Callis and Takeshita, because, as you know, Don Callis claims that Takeshita will be the one person that will bring back the AEW World title. And MJF is determined to ensure, look, if you beat Darby Allin, I don't want to put this whole thing with the hair thing. And that was the deal. But however, MJF had to hand over as payment to Don Callis to deal Darby Allin. And then, of course, Andrade showed up and got in his face, showing his beautiful hair. Like, I think Andrade is rather curious. I'd rather see you bald, you know? Because if you guys saw a while back, he actually he drove him crazy, like saying, how do you know? And then once again, he did the same thing with Don Callis, when Don Callis is confident to believe that Takeshita will bring back the AEW World title. And of course, he tells him, how'd you know? And of course, Don Callis doesn't need to tell him how he knows, because he knows. I'm like, yeah, right. So that kind of plays out there too. Now, however, Renee Paquette did another interview with the conglomeration, as you know. This is the second time in 2 weeks now that Orange Cassidy was able to they were able to pick up a win. However, of course, they haven't decided who's going to be the ones to challenge for the AEW Tag Team belt. However, Kyle O'Reilly told that it's not that to him it's an easy answer, and he said that Roderick Strong and Orange Cassidy should be the ones to do so. And of course, Roderick Strong goes, Kyle, thank you. And of course, Kyle O'Reilly had his other reasons why he wanted those two to team up, because, as you know, he has unfinished business with Jon Moxley, and not to mention he wants the AEW Continental title. So it makes a lot more sense. And of course, we have Willow Nightingale, who's determined to defend the TBS title, but not to mention, it's been now said that she will be involved in this year's Owen Hart Foundation tournament. So that's going to be in. But however, we did have another surprise visit. Mark Briscoe with the word of the day, reunification. So, as you know, going Mark Briscoe, bring Mark Briscoe, and that sort of thing. So, that plays out well too. Now, our next match is the Triangle Madness. Tekla, Julia Hart, and Sky Blue taking on the Hikaru Shida and the Brawling Birds with Jamie Hayter and Alex Windsor. Now, of course, when it comes to the Triangle Madness, once again they continue to wreak havoc all over AEW as much as possible. But Tekla decided to play dirty and whack Jamie Hayter with the championship belt in her face and resulted in a disqualification match. Now, I'm going to presume that Hayter and the Brawling Birds are, in fact, how do I say, one. But however, Shida walked away. She just didn't do anything to defend, of course, the Brawling Birds while they're being mishandled by being punished by the Triangle Madness. But thank God for Thunder Rosa, Mina Shirakawa, Willow Nightingale to come into the Brawling Birds' aid. So we'll see how things roll from there. Now, our main event is the AEW World Title, Takeshita versus Darby Allin. Now, it's no secret that Darby Allin doesn't have a good record against Takeshita, so that kind of plays out in itself too. And of course, that's what led to, of course, Don Callis to say that this will be a perfect match for finally bringing back the AEW World Title. But you know how Darby Allin is. He can take whatever it throws at him. I mean, you can put him through a barrier right in front of you. He will still keep on going, no matter what. And then, of course, Don had to get involved and had Takeshita use the Dynamite Diamond Ring, but failed miserably. And then, of course, it took only one shot for Darby Allin to apply the coffin drop. 1, 2, 3. It was over. However, he wants this contract to be signed by MJF, which he did. But MJF, as you know, he feels like, Darby, you don't even deserve to become champion. And of course, he tried to break him in half, but luckily Kevin Knight showed up and helped Darby Allin because Kevin Knight knows he cannot let this happen. So basically, we'll see. And I wouldn't be surprised if MJF decided to deal with Kevin Knight his own way for interfering with because if you guys remember, Kevin Knight did not win his match against MJF, so you can tell that maybe there's some unfinished business. But we'll see how that plays out as the road to Double or Nothing continues on. But we'll see what happens on Collision, I believe. But nonetheless, we'll leave things as it is. But as of right now, we'll end things here with AEW. Let's move on to wrap up with some news updates. Okay, so welcome to our news update. So let's do some upcoming events. First thing, we have GCW with two things in mind. As you know, they have the Race Against Time in Cincinnati, Ohio. They announced a 6-man tag team match, or 6-person. We have Busta and the Brain, Jordan Oliver, and Alec Price teaming up with Billy Starks. Then we have Gringo Loco teaming up with Davey Bang and August Matthews. Now, another show that I did mention, it will happen in Hartford, Connecticut, is now called You Only Die Once, and it will happen on the 11th of July. So no names have been mentioned yet, but I'm sure we will get to that as soon as possible. And finally, a promotion called Blitzkrieg Pro. I might have did a review of that maybe a minute ago or so. Well, you know what I mean. Anyway, they announced for their upcoming event on June... later on in June, and they just announced former NXT talent Dante Chen will be participating, which is very interesting indeed. Now, on to some developments here. Recently, Sean Ross Sapp reports that Big Bill's AEW contract will be up by the end of this month or at the start of June. It's still unclear exactly what's going to happen, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, as you all know, there's been talk. Kevin Knight talked about did not like how TKO are cutting, of course, the pay cut of every WWE superstar, and they felt they should unionize some sort of thing with WWE. The rest is something that, of course, WWE opposed, But however, Andrew Yang, who I have heard his name, has agreed with Kevin Knight that they should do something like this. Now, Swerve Strickland has been saying that he would love to see the New Day come to AEW, and that's also a conversation that has been, of course, been mentioned. So he said that it could value a lot into, of course, the WWE for what they can do, despite of what people would say. So we'll see what that leads to. Now, they mentioned the Owen Hart tournament, of course. Let me pull it up here. They mentioned, of course, names involving that. Now, for the women's, we have, of course, Persephone will be in action against Hazuki, and then Willow Nightingale will face Alex Windsor. We have Mina Shirakawa versus Athena. Then we have Sky Blue versus Suri, which is interesting. And on to the men, we have Samoa Joe versus Will Ospreay, which is kind of interesting. Jungle Jack Perry faces against the man that he lost the AEW national title to. Then we have Sir Strickland versus Bandito, who's been on the hunt. Claudio Castagnoli versus Brody King. So I have to say this is going to be an interesting event. So can't wait to see it. So I think we're done with everything. Let's call it a day. Hope everybody enjoys this episode. Coming up, we have the beginning of the Best of the Super Juniors by New Japan Pro Wrestling with the first round matches. Of course, keep in mind this is a round robin tournament, so I'll explain more about that. We have TNA and Ring of Honor, so that's the plan for our next episode. So until then, I will see you guys in the next DWZ time, same DWZ channel. I must bid all of you adieu. So, goodbye, and have a nice day. Bang!